Hi guys, it's Namka4 here with the Samsung Galaxy S4, the Sony Xperia Z, the HTC ONE, and of course the Samsung Galaxy Note 2. We're going to be doing a screen comparison between all these handsets, see how they fare against each other. And before we get into it, we'll just go over the screen specs so we know what we're comparing against. Along the left hand side here, the Samsung Galaxy Note 2 has a 5.5 inch Super AMOLED capacitive touchscreen, has a resolution of 1280 by 720, that brings up a density of 267 pixels per inch. The HTC ONE here has a 4.7 inch Super LCD 3 capacitive touchscreen with a HD resolution of 1920 by 1080, and that brings up a density of 469 pixels per inch. The Sony Xperia Z here has a 5 inch TFT capacitive touchscreen, also with a HD resolution of 1920 by 1080, and that brings up a density of 441 pixels per inch. And finally, along the right hand side here, we have the Samsung Galaxy S4. This has a 5 inch Super AMOLED capacitive touchscreen, as well as having a HD resolution of 1920 by 1080. This also brings up a density of 441 pixels per inch. I also want to mention what's actually protecting these gorgeous screens. The Samsung Galaxy Note 2 and the HTC ONE here have cornering Gorilla Glass 2. The Sony Xperia Z here has Dragon Tail Glass from Asahi. And the Samsung Galaxy S4 here has cornering Gorilla Glass 3. Just before we begin, I just want to mention that no power saving modes are on any of these handsets. All the power management features on each and every handset have been turned off. The brightness on each handset has been set to full, and the Sony Bravia Engine 2 on the Sony Xperia Z here has been enabled. What we're essentially going to be doing is looking at the same photograph on each and every handset at the same time. Then we're going to have a look at a movie trailer. First up here we have a photograph of Phoebe Tonkin, an Australian actress, and you should notice straight away the black bars along the top and bottom of the Sony Xperia Z are more of a washed out high-end grayscale than black itself, comparing to the Galaxy S4 next to it, and even the HTC ONE there. Just zooming into Phoebe's face here, you can see on the Sony Xperia Z here that the colours aren't as vibrant as they are on the Super AMOLED screen of the Galaxy S4. Take a look at the top of her head on the Galaxy S4 and even the top of her shoulders where the clothing is here. It's much darker black than it is on the Sony Xperia Z, which is more of a washed out grey colour than it is a black as such. But look at the top of her hair, it looks like it's almost a darker brown than a black itself. And looking at the HTC ONE there, that seems to be somewhere in between the Galaxy S4 and the Sony Xperia Z there. The Note 2 along the left hand side, again looking at her hair colour and the tops of her shoulders there where the clothing is, seems to be more vibrant and darker blacks than the HTC ONE and the Sony Xperia Z, but still not quite as dark as the Galaxy S4 there. And while we're talking about vibrance of colour, have a look at her lips on the Galaxy S4 there, and her green eyes and the skin tone there, which tends to be more washed out on the Sony Xperia Z. Looks more of a natural colour though, but incredible detail even so on the Sony Xperia Z. The HTC ONE doesn't look as vibrant as a Samsung Galaxy S4 when you look at the lips and the eye colour, but still incredible detail nonetheless. And again, the Note 2 still vibrant, but not quite the same league as the Galaxy S4 there. We have some sliced grapefruit here, and check out the Galaxy Note 2, how vibrant that looks around the inside of the grapefruit there in comparison to the Galaxy S4 here. And even the Sony Xperia Z seems to look more vibrant than the Galaxy S4 here. The HTC ONE though, again, seems to be somewhere in between the Xperia Z and the Galaxy S4. Zooming into this cut grapefruit and have a look at the Galaxy Note 2, how vibrant that looks indeed in comparison to the Galaxy S4, which seems to be on a par with the HTC ONE in this particular photograph. But have a look at the Sony Xperia Z, seems to be a close second when zooming in on this particular photograph. Very vibrant indeed. And if you have a look at the background there on the HTC ONE there, very bright indeed. Seems to be more washed out in comparison to the other devices that we have here. We got a set of lips and teeth here, and you can see the skin tone on the Galaxy S4 seems to be brighter than certainly the Sony Xperia Z, where it just looks like white colour. And the HTC ONE there, again somewhere in between, but still nowhere near the colour vibrancy of the Galaxy S4. And the Note 2 itself, again somewhere behind the Galaxy S4, but still ahead of the other two here. Now that we're zoomed in here, the colour differences should definitely be apparent, but check a look at the amount of detail on all of these displays. The top lip here, where you can see the very fine hair follicles on the Galaxy Note 2. You can see those on the HTC ONE, on the Sony Xperia Z, just barely there, and the Samsung Galaxy S4 there. Incredible amount of detail, even across the wrinkles of the skin, along the bottom lip here on all the handsets. But take a look at the tone of the tongue, and the bottom lip there. The Galaxy S4 doesn't appear to be as brighter when zooming in. The Sony Xperia Z seems to be better in terms of color reproduction. The Note 2 here, as you can see, seems to be slightly better than the Sony Xperia Z here. Certainly the Note 2 and the Sony Xperia Z looking better close up in this photograph. Here we have Bruce Willis in a black leather jacket. Again, if you have a look at the black bars across the top and bottom of this image on the Sony Xperia Z, again, not much of a black, more of a washed out grey really. If you have a look at the Samsung Galaxy S4, how dark does his jacket look in comparison to the Sony Xperia Z. But the HTC ONE still reproducing that very dark colour greatly indeed. Zooming into half of his face here, and you can definitely see how deep the blacks are on his leather jacket here. The black on the Galaxy S4 here seems to be more of a glossy black, still very deep indeed, more of a washed out black on the Sony Xperia Z, and the HTC ONE a very, very deep black indeed. Again, somewhere in between these two handsets. The Note 2 and the Super AMOLED screen here, very, very deep black indeed, as you'd expect. But take a look at his skin tone along the Galaxy S4 in comparison to the other devices. The Note 2 being more vibrant in terms of what's on his face in comparison to the Galaxy S4. Obviously this depends on how long he's been spending in the sunbed, but have a look at his stubble along the Galaxy S4, how dark that looks in comparison to the Sony Xperia Z, where it's more of a washed out brightness than colour itself. And the HTC ONE there, again somewhere in between these two handsets, but the amount of detail on all these handsets is absolutely stunning. I mean, take a look at the wrinkles around his eyes. Even these can be seen on the Sony Xperia Z, although it's kind of more of a brightness than colour itself. The HTC ONE reproducing those very, very good indeed. And the Note 2 with that bigger screen looks absolutely stunning. I mean, look at the wrinkles around his eyes, even his eyebrows themselves and the pigment within his eye look absolutely stunning on all these handsets. But the colour reproduction on the Note 2, I mean, look at that in this particular photograph. Seems to be a step ahead of the Samsung Galaxy S4 as well. Now what we're going to do is take a look at a film trailer called Thor 2. Now I should mention at this point that no power saving modes are on. All the power management features on all the handsets are still off. The Sony Xperia Z has a Sony Bravia Engine 2 still turned on, and the brightness on all the handsets is still set to full. Freezing frame here, and take a look at the Sony Xperia Z, how white that frame looks. Have a look at the girl's hair in comparison to the Samsung Galaxy S4, the HTC ONE, and also the Note 2. Looks very, very white, not very vibrant in terms of colour at all. But the Galaxy S4, even the yellowness of the steel beams behind this little girl seems vibrant there. And the HTC ONE also doing well in this particular frame as well. Freezing frame on the Marvel logo here. Look at the Super AMOLED screens of the Note 2 and the Galaxy S4, how deep and vibrant red that looks. And the HTC ONE here being somewhere in between the Xperia Z and the Galaxy S4, where the Sony Xperia Z seems to be more of a washed out red colour than a vibrant one. A freeze frame on a landscape here, and take a look at the Sony Xperia Z. You can actually make out the rock formation pretty clearly. The background there seems to be pretty washed out, but not as deep blacks in comparison to the other devices. Have a look at the Super AMOLED screens here, the Note 2 and the S4. Very deep blacks indeed when it comes to the rocks. And you can just about make out the rock formation on the Galaxy S4 and the Note 2. The HTC ONE, again, somewhere in between the S4 and the Xperia Z, because you can clearly make out the rock formation and you can kind of make out what's in the background as well. We freeze frame on Thor's father here, but take a look at the Sony Xperia Z, how white that looks in the background there in comparison to the darkness of the Super AMOLED screens, and even the HTC ONE there. Look at the incredible amounts of detail on his beard on all four handsets. Looks very good indeed. But take a look at the Galaxy S4, the colour reproduction on his face and his shoulder pads there. Very vibrant, more so than the Note 2. And again, the HTC ONE being somewhere in between the S4 and the Xperia Z again. We freeze frame within a battle and check a look at the Sony Xperia Z. It seems more whiter, washed out than colourful. The Samsung Galaxy S4, take a look at the hair, the face and the background fire as well, how vibrant that looks indeed, as well as the green shrubbery. The HTC ONE again seems to be somewhere in between the S4 and the Sony Xperia Z, but have a look at that fire in the background. Seems very good indeed on the HTC ONE. And the Note 2, again, coming slightly behind the Galaxy S4. Not as vibrant, but very detailed indeed. Very deep blacks around her face and in terms of the hair. Color reproduction on her face. And also very bright fire behind her as well. Now what we'll do is play the film trailer in full and see how the devices compare. We're going to try and play them at the same time, but unfortunately I don't have 4 hands. And the sound that you're going to be hearing is going to be from the Galaxy S4. The sound on the remaining devices has actually been muted. So let's see how far we can get these started.
Some believe that before the universe, there was nothing. They're wrong. There was darkness. And it has survived. I gave you my word. I would return.
What's gonna happen?
Hold on.
Wait, what? Jane! We're from different worlds. Maybe they're separate for a reason.
If we do nothing, they'll destroy us. Ask yourself, what will you sacrifice for what you believe? You must be truly desperate to come to me for help. You should know that when you betray me, I will kill you. When do we start?
And that was a screen comparison between the Samsung Galaxy S4, the Sony Xperia Z, the Samsung Galaxy Note 2, and of course the HTC ONE. It's not the most scientific experiment in the world, but it's just to give you an idea of what the differences are between these screen technologies. Any comments or questions you guys have got, hit them up in the comment section down below there. Give us a thumbs up if you like this video and you like what you saw. If you haven't already done so, hit subscribe. It's also down there as well. Doesn't cost you a penny. And you can also check out some of our forthcoming videos. Thanks for watching. Have an awesome day, and we'll see you next time.